it was a pleasure reading your positionality statements. This weekend, I'm going to be reading your reflective journals for your, for the readings these last few weeks. If you have not yet submitted your reflective journals, do it ASAP because I'm going to be grading them this weekend. Remember now, a few things. So you need to at least pick one of the required readings and at least one of those as you do your reflective journals. Okay. We've been seeing the U.S.-Mexico border, right? So we started with the Native Nations, specifically broadly with the U.S. Native Nations along the U.S.-Mexico borderlands. Then we focus on our Native Nations here. From there, we looked at the U.S.-Mexico history, and we read Martinez. We also read literature here from the Valley, and then we also got to see Ansandua as well. And last session, we engaged in some, I think, were pretty brilliant reflections, where we were looking at manifest destiny and how that was utilized as a tactic of expansion, right? And also the effect of colonialism along the borderlands and what that meant for people, but by people at the region, and specifically also how that is still perpetuated today, and as well as reflections about the modern day tactics of manifest destiny. So we kind of got we dove into the literature, and in the last session, but it was in your reflective readings that reflective journals that I've been seeing how you've been diving more deeper in those reflections. So I appreciate it. So as we kind of go broad, but then we bring it down narrow and even more narrow. Similarly, how in the last couple of weeks we saw the focus of the Native Nations along the U.S.-Mexico borderlands, and then specifically here in Calexico, Mexicali, the Imperial Valley. Today, as we saw the U.S.-Mexico border, U.S.-Mexico history last week. Today, what we're going to be looking at is the history here in the Valley, specifically the race and national identity in Mexicali, in the Mexicali territory of Baja California, Mexico. And Prof. Reyes was saying how there could be no better professor than me for the fest. There are a lot, but they're really cool professors, I would say. But if I could say something, is that I cannot think of a better professor to talk about the history of here, of the valley, of El Valle Imperial, of Mexicali, Calexico, than Prof. Reyes. So in this class, as I mentioned, as we're going to be diving into readings, we're going to be working on our groups in regards to engaging in these reflections of what these readings mean, and looking at these readings critically. We're also going to be having what I call a Borderlands speaker series. So we're going to be having in our class speakers who are focusing their research, their activism, their art along the U.S.-Mexico borderlands. So we had my colleague last week, Aussie Morgan, who is from the Otoano Nation, and he brought some in-depth to understanding what Native Nations, what the lived experiences of Native Nations, not just in history, but today as well, and what does that mean for the realities of Native people, and particularly even identity. He gave some insights on identity and what it means sometimes to be caught in the in-between of Mexico, of the U.S., of the colonialized Mexico, of the colonialized U.S. as well, and what that means for Native people. And he brought some insights for us through his lecture. So bringing insights into the understanding of the Imperial Valley, Mexicali region, and specifically what that means for our historical perspectives is Prof. Reyes. So I want to provide a little bit more understanding of who Prof. Reyes is. Gilberto Reyes Morgan has always been living between the Mexicali and El Centro. He's what you call a transfronterizo person. As a native of the hybrid borderlands, Mexicali and the Imperial Valley, he has based his academic work in this history. His thesis, Race and National Identity in Mexicali Territory of Baja California, talks about the cultural, economic, and social impact of the Japanese and Chinese communities in Mexicali through the 1900s and early 1940s, also focusing on the agriculture movements of the 1937 Asalto de las Tierras and the colonialism of the Colorado River, and how that has negatively impacted the Cucaba community. Profe Reyes has his AA in Liberal Studies from the Imperial Valley College, his BA in History from San Diego State University, Imperial Valley. He also has a Master's in History from Cal State Fullerton under the guidance of Chicano anthropologist Dr. Alejandro Gaviria, historian Dr. Stephen Newfield, and Nancy Fitchard, as well as Gerardo Arellano. Since 2013, thanks to the Chicanx Studies Program and History Department, he has presented various topics on the history of the counterculture movement in Mexico since the 50s and 90s, and struggles of the Chicanx community at the Imperial County and the National Association of Chicano and Chicana Studies. In 2015, he came back to the Mexicali Imperial Valley. Since then, he has taught as a part-time instructor for both the alma mater of the Imperial Valley Community College and at San Diego State University, Imperial Valley. In the past 4 years, he has worked at IBC with faculty and staff on creating a Chicano major at IBC. He has also helped create the course Chicano 100, the course Chicano 110, and in addition, he is also the only advisor, one of the founders of the SDSU Campus Club Chicanx Sin Fronteras, but he has also become the mentor for many SDSU students that are going to be part of the future leaders of the Imperial Valley. So that is Profe Reyes. So with no further ado, I pass on the mic to Profe Reyes.
Or how I say it, compa, it's my amiga. No, we've been along really good also as well. Nice to have you all here. Gracias por invitarme, doctora, la verdad, muchas gracias. And I know my colega Diana from Mexicali is here. Muchas gracias, Diana. And so, muchas gracias, la verdad. So, this is our history, nuestra historia. ¿Quiénes son de Mexicali? De Cachanillas, okay, yo también soy Cachanilla. Alright, so who has relatives in Mexicali? Okay, ¿verdad? Ay, okay. So this is our history, nuestra historia. We need to learn about this porque realmente, really, the story that is being written supposedly by the government is a false story. Eso de que, Capone came to Mexicali and had business in Mexicali. Now that is why, that's a big lie. And I'm like, but we're going to talk about the history of Mexicali and Raza. See, Mexicali has a lot of history, and the reason why this is my thesis, it started with Eric Boyne. Many of you probably have had him. Eric Boyne is a history teacher here. It started with him. Then it continued at the master's program under the Chicano Studies program and the history program. And so the idea was race and national identity. Get Raza, what is national identity? Can you be a Chinese Mexican and still consider yourself Chinese and Mexicano? Of course. That's what's going on in Mexicali in 1920, 1930. You had Japanese Mexicalenses, Cachanillas, right? But still, they're not what you call Mexico had a revolution in 1910. And after the revolution, it created a national ideology or identity. This so-called identidad mexicana. Mexico did not have an identity before 1920. Because you had Porfiriato. And Porfiriato was more of a French bourgeoisie society. Then before Porfirio Diaz, Mexico was constantly in war. The invasion of Maximiliano and Burgos, right? Then you had before that, La Guerra de la Reforma from 1852, 1860, La Guerra de la Reforma. Then you had the invasion of the U.S. Before that, you had the invasion of the U.S. And before that, you had La Guerra de los Pasteles. And before that, you had no identity in Mexico until 1920. And guess what the identity was? You have to be mestizo, Catholic, and that's it. But if you're Chinese Mexican, you are not part of the Mexicanes. Oh, by the way, mariachi was considered to be the national music. Not banda, not norteño, but mariachi. That is something wrong, because even though I love mariachi, mariachi is not the only music in Mexico. Then you had the radio stations, XNW, or you had the Voz de la América Latina, which stated that real Mexicans listen to mariachi. And then you had the movies that give you the image of the child, and that image of Mexico was a false image. false nationalist image created by the political party in power, Partido Revolucionario Mexicano, today known as El PRI. All right, so kind of an intro. I'm a Mexican historian, by the way. La historia Mexicali. Each history, his topic is like a river. According to Mark Twain, that's what he said. You read Mark Twain with Lopez? No? Anything Mark Twain? He's not that good. But anyway, Mark Twain said that lives are like rivers. I think history topics are like rivers that leads to another topic, so they all meet. And Mexicali is that river. You know Mexicali used to have a lot of rivers before the Hoover Dam. My grandma, my abuela Ramona, may she rest in peace, came from Mazatlan, Sinaloa, all the way to Mexicali on a steamboat called La Pasita. And again, you had your Rio Nuevo used to be a really large river, and you will ride from Mazatlan, Sinaloa, all the way to Mexicali on the steamboat. And Mexicali, where you had a lot of rivers. Okay, that's why when it rains, you have a lot of floods, because the nature says, oh, here's a river, right? And so Mexicali has a lot of topics, a lot of rivers that connect to each other. History topics such as modernization of Mexico during the Porfiriato. That is one of my specific topics at Porfiriato, right? The arrival of the Oral, which meant the arrival of the Oral River Company into the Valle of Mexicali. Porfirio Diaz wanted to modernize Mexico, especially northern Mexico, because before Porfiriato, there was nothing in Mexico. Until in Porfiriato, you have the industrialization of Monterrey, Nuevo León, Monterrey, Nuevo León, Coahuila, the state of Coahuila, Torreón, and you had a lot of changes in Torreón, and the industrialization and creation of El Valle Mexicali. And you have the arrival of the Oral River Land Company. At the same time, Mexicali also has the topic of Chinese and Japanese immigration during the Porfiriato. And then another topic that Mexicali has, anti-Chinese movements during and after the Mexican Revolution in northern Mexico. A lot of the Chinese that are living in Mexicali came to refuge in Mexicali because of the anti-Chinese movements in Sinaloa and Sonora. Why not in Mexicali? Oh yes, you had violence for the Chinese, but because Mexicali is a territory of Baja California, not a state. Until 1950, Baja California became a state of Mexico because it's a territory the federal government had to keep peace with the immigrants, because if a Japanese got murdered in Mexicali, the Japanese ambassador, no, this is by 1920, 1930, and Japan is now a badass country. You know that, right? Right now they're invading Korea, they're invading Manchuria. Yeah, not close enough. And Mexico's not one problem with Japan, no problems. So if Japan knows that the Japanese was murdered in Mexicali, which is a federal territory, Mexicali, you gotta pay me, or you're gonna get in trouble. So Mexico is like, you know what, Mexican government in Baja California, keep things down, because we don't want problems with international problems. Native American struggles throughout the first 40 years of the 20th century in northern Mexico, the alienation and the rejection they had. This idea of Mexicanidad after the revolution, that Mexicanos are mestizos. We celebrate mestizaje by giving Diego Rivera these murals, ¿verdad? And the Aztecs, what a wonderful civilization, yet the indigenous are living in poverty in the Mexican concept of Mexicanidad, okay? So it's kind of the hypocrisy of the Mexican idea of Mexicanidad, because you're not real Mexicans, you're indigenous. We love you, but we don't want to help. And this idea of agrarian reform didn't really help them a lot. It actually hurt their culture more. Telling them, we're going to give you small acres of land, but no, wait a minute, we're not agrarians, we're artists, we're artisans. No. You're going to work in an ejido. Okay. Yeah, the deportation of Mexicans from the U.S. during the Great Depression of 1929. A lot of Mexicanos are coming back, are being deported from the U.S. during the Great Depression of 1929. Guess where they're arriving? Mexicali. And who's in Mexicali, in downtown? The Chinese and Japanese, La Chinesca. They arrive to Mexicali, they arrive with their mochilas, are being deported, and they're like, wait a minute, this is not Mexico, this is China. What the hell? No, wait, this is, okay, hey, I want a job. No, I'm not gonna give you a job. Mexico belongs to the Mexicans. You know, this is, and you have the anti-Chinese movement beginning to escalate in Mexicali because of this. And we'll talk more, I'll give you details on how that escalates. El cardenismo en Mexicali, the creation of the ejidos, nationalist movement, the agrarian reform in el asalto de las tierras. All of these subtopics of history meet in one particular place in 40 years in Mexicali. So in Mexico history, you have subtopics. And all of these subtopics happen to happen in Mexicali. So when they tell you nothing happened in Mexicali, no tiene historia, tu madre. No. Mexicali has a lot of history, you just don't know it. You know when I found out? When I was doing the masters. When I had to go to the National Archives in Mexico City for 6 months. Archivo General de la Nación, Secretaría de Relaciones Exteriores, Instituto Mora, and Instituto Frank Meyer. Those places is where I found all of this. And I'm like, Eureka, I have my thesis. Any questions? I'm like, I'm talking too fast. I'm like, this is history, guys. My passion, I'm sorry. All right, the Delta. We kind of talked about, you kind of talked about the Bucapas with Doctora Pacon, ¿verdad? The Delta, no? Yes, it is? Okay, good. The Delta had a lot of resources, guys. This is what Mexicali used to look like before colonization. This is how it used to look. And I don't know if you've seen after it rains in the Rio Nuevo, there's like these type of leaves. Okay, because nature's like, hey, I'm not going out, we don't want you here. But nature, that's how the Valle de Mexicali looks. The mixture of salt water of the Gulf of Cortez and the sweet water of El Rio Colorado gave a unique plant and ecosystem. So we had a really unique ecosystem here that unfortunately has disappeared. Yeah. Due to the Hoover Dam and the cementation of the canals. Oh, yeah, by the way, the canals here are cemented, ¿verdad? They have cement. You know why? Because the U.S. doesn't want to share water with Mexico and resources. So because of that, many sections of the delta have disappeared because the water will go under the land and go all the way to Mexico, and the U.S. like, no, we're going to cement the canal so there's no water going to Mexico. And that's why the delta of the Colorado is getting dry. The Colorado Delta has begun to disappear due to the excess of agriculture business and overuse of resources such as water and fertile land. So it's disappearing, guys. And it's going to disappear, guys, unfortunately, because I don't see nor PRI, nor PAN, nor PRD, nor Morena are doing nothing. They're not doing nothing, okay? No one's doing nothing. Because we already talked about them, so I think it's kind of, we're going to just acknowledge them, the importance. They are still here, and we're going to talk about the importance of Bucapas right here. We see one of the first pictures that we have of Bucapas in the Valle Mexicali. Okay. And this is their homes, right? Their art, their artisan. And, this is the Delta. This is the geography place we're going to be talking about. Mexicali, this big concrete jungle in Valle Mexicali. Who's from the Valle Mexicali? ¿Alguien del Valle? No, man, the Valle, de Cuervos, some Mezquital. Really beautiful Valle Mexicali. I'm not going to give you these details of first colonization of the Valle, or first contact with the Bucapas, because I think it's important. But what I want you to know, guys, that the first major contact that the Bucapas had was with the U.S. government, manifestly, like the Puerto was saying, in 1851. The port of Yuma is beginning to open, and it's making its presence of the U.S. Army in the Colorado River. Now, raise your hand if you've gone to Yuma, the territorial prison. All right, you see that the river used to be big? I don't know, you've seen like kind of it's drying up. All of Yuma was the river, and the U.S. had the port there. And there you have the Bucapas beginning to trade with the U.S. Army. Farming and the system is beginning to disappear because of steamboat. The arrival of the steamboat will change. Guys, I don't know if you've taken my class. Capitalism has been the main death of Native American culture. When capitalism arrives to Native American culture, they have to adapt to capitalism. They have to find a job, or they have to, for example, in this case, the Bucapas cannot fish, cannot hunt anymore because now the steamboats are killing the fish and are taking away the fish. And therefore they have to find a job with steamboat companies in order to survive. Okay, same thing happened in Washington State, where lumbering companies and fishing companies are beginning to make resources lack for the Native Americans, and the Native Americans are like, well, there's no more wood, no more fish, what do we do? Oh, get a job with a lumbering company. And by the third or fourth generation, the children are leaving the language, the culture, the customs, because capitalism is what it does. And it killed the Native Americans, the culture. I'm not saying this is by my friend, Native American scholar David McDaniel. I'm quoting him, and he helped me do this research, by the way. I want to thank my friend if he's, I can send him the link. I don't think he has logged in yet. All right, so the navigation company, oh, that is, okay, where, ¿dónde es ahí? Adivinen. Where? Adivinen. You've been there. You raised your hand that you were there. And they're there. They see it, and you still see them. Yuma. That's Yuma, guys. That is one of the first drawings that we have of Yuma, Arizona. And that is the steamboat. Okay? All right. Now, the steamboat companies are beginning to hire the bucapas, and again, many of them are beginning to get sick because of the pollution of the steamboat. I want to just, again, go here to the last part. The bucapas are beginning to wear clothes like shirts and pants due to the labor in the steamboat. See, they cannot be semi-naked because the steamboat will burn you. You're putting wood into the oven and it sparks, so you have to wear clothes. The traditional vestment will disappear. Their diet also begins to change. That is important. When capitalism arrives to Native American communities, the first thing that is affected is the diet. Always. The diet is beginning to change. The introduction of coffee and sugar. Even though I love coffee and sugar, it's not good. It's not good. Their diet changes, and therefore they are beginning to suffer health issues like heartburn. And they're saying, what's the big deal? They didn't have heartburn, overweight, obesity, high blood pressure, and heart disease. And that's why still to this day, the Bucapa community, the main killer is diabetes. Because they're not used to this type of food. They're used to fish and vegetables. And by the way, they will eat 5 times a day. Small portions, like we must do. But due to capitalism, that we always have to be like this. We only have half an hour to eat. Can you believe that? You know, we must, again, the ancestors, which are connected to our bodies, are like, hey, you know, do something. And I don't know, just as a historian, as a scholar, and as a friend of the Native American, and as an ally of the Native American community, I think we should start listening to them. Because they're really wise people. They're a really wise community. So, for those who have had me, you know I talk a lot about Native Americans in my class. We have like 3 lectures on Native American history, or 2 California history we spent talking about Native Americans. They're important. Their history must be known. All right, this is where my thesis began. You know Porfirio Diaz, the dictator of Mexico? Oh, right, a little bit of chisme. Porfirio Diaz became popular because he was the general that wanted Cinco de Mayo, and he wanted people to celebrate him. So that's why Cinco de Mayo was celebrated in Mexico, and that's why the U.S. celebrated Cinco de Mayo, because Porfirio Diaz was the first president that did an international relationship with the U.S., allowing the U.S. to come to Mexico and exploit the resources, and sold weapons to Mexico, and Mexico had the most modern army, because Porfirio Diaz was now friend of Uncle Sam, which means, hey, Uncle Sam, that's straight. I have Mexicali. You want to come and exploit that land, and the resources will be yours, but you give me half of it. And that's why you have the revolution beginning. During the 1900s to the early 20th century, the Mexican government, led by the dictator Porfirio Diaz, had been worried that the territory of Baja California had a low population. Mexicali did not have, Baja California only had 1 city by 1900. That was Ensenada. And the biggest fear was the Americans are going to take over Baja California just like they took over Texas. Be careful. In 1902, the American Coral Riverland Company had been founded by Henry Chandler, owner of the LA Times. Here's the drama, the Netflix series begins. Henry Chandler knew that water was the future. Why? Is water the future? Yes, without water we'll die. Without water we will not be able to take baths. You see, there will be a time that water will be more expensive than oil and any other resources, guys. All right? According to the Bus, they said this, that without water, without Earth being the water, you're nothing. So they didn't understand the concept. They did understand why they wanted to control the Colorado River. By the way, I went to the LA Times to look at their archives and said, oh, what's up with the Colorado Riverland Company? Oh, we don't have them. Get out. There's something fishy there. Yeah. They're beginning to buy and develop what is today the Bahia of Mexicali. So, due to this reason, Mexicali was founded on March 14, 1903. That is the day Mexicali was founded, and there is the Colorado River building, which is still exists to this day. Many people go and take pictures there, there's quinceañeras, there's bodas, right? They go there and pass by. I don't know, you remember passing by?
Yes.
It's actually where we're going to be on Friday, on Ramon G. It's going to be next to that. That is el Palacio de la Colorado. Now, on May 23rd, 1904, the Colorado Riverland Company bought land of the newly found town named Mexicali. It paid $173,000 for 185,000 acres of land. That's a lot. By 1910, the Colorado Riverland Company became owner of the majority of the agricultural land by Mexicali, and therefore, that land that used to be owned by the Papas was now owned by this American company. So who will be the first ones to be affected by this colonization? The Papas. All right. Oh, but the Chinese were here. No, the Chinese